Going to give it just a minute while everyone starts trickling in to get settled. So give us just a minute and we will get started in a minute. But would love for anyone who's just joining to go ahead and introduce yourself and let us know where you're tuning in from in the chat over on the right side. Minneapolis, Brooklyn, awesome. Well, thank you all for being here. Just wanted to welcome everyone and let you know my name's Brianna and I manage events and workshops for General Assembly. A little bit about today's event. I'm not muted, am I? You can hear me? Okay. We're going to have a really great panel discussion for y'all this evening. We'll get to some audience Q&A, and then we're going to play around a little bit with Air Meet for anyone who's new. We'll go over how to network at different tables when that section is ready. So what is General Assembly? For anyone who has not joined an event or workshop with us before, we are a global technology company. We focus on education within business, data, design, and tech. So our mission is to empower individuals to do what they love, and we do that in a few different ways. We offer full-time courses for those looking to make career changes. We have our part-time courses for those looking to level up. And we have short-form workshops and like one-day boot camps for those looking to learn a new skill or dip your toe in the water. And then free events just like this one, currently all online, but we have almost 40 campuses across the globe. And we usually do in-person events on an almost daily basis. So I am going to invite Mark. So give me just a minute. I'm going to get Mark up here, who's with ProductHired and partnering with us today. And he's going to share a little bit about what he's been up to.
Awesome. This is so exciting. The first time I'm invited as opposed to inviting people. Hey guys, I'm Mark Steffen, VP of Product for ProductHired. A lot of words in product tonight. So ProductHired is a career site for people who work on products. That means product management, product owners, product marketing, user research design, project program management, and data science. Pretty much everything except engineering, because that would just be too much. So on ProductHired right now, you can find jobs, producthired.com. You can post jobs. If you're an employer, you're hiring for product people, please post it on ProductHired. It actually goes out through multiple communities, even here in Austin. And it's free, so go ahead and do that. We have interview guides. So if you're interviewing at Facebook, Google, Amazon, we probably have like 10 or so guides, and we're always creating more. Go ahead and check those out. That'll give you the inside secret on how to be excellent in interviewing. And we also have product events. Next slide. And we have several new things that have just launched and are launching in September. So we have a YouTube channel. And in fact, if everything is working out properly, which I don't know if it is, I'm checking a look if it is, we should be streaming right now to YouTube, maybe to Facebook. If it's not, we'll get it done later. But we have tons of previous events. ProductHired Job Club is a meetup that we run, helping people to get into product. Check out those events. We have product tank events. Basically, if there's a product event going on, I try to swipe it and put it up on our channel. So take a look there. And subscribe and notifications, all that actually helps us get more features so we can help you more. And then I'm really excited about this. In September, we are launching a coaching marketplace. And essentially, it's a marketplace where you can be a mentor or coach for any of our roles, or you can get coaching or mentorship. Free, paid. We're starting off with resume review, portfolio, and career coaching. Guys, I know others are going to talk about this, but the number one thing you could do for your career is get a mentor. And one of the things we found is that people keep on saying they want to get one. They just never found one. Well, we're going to solve that. And so we're really excited. Probably middle of September, we're going to be launching this. If you're interested, go ahead and sign up. You can sign up to be a coach, or you can sign up to be coached. And we'll email you once we launch. We're very excited about this. Thank you so much for tonight. And you guys should have a great time.
Thank you, Mark. And I will send in the follow-up email with the recording. I'll also include some more information so y'all don't have to like jot down these links. I'll send them all to you. So a little bit about meeting norms. This is the first time that I'm hosting on AirMeet. So one huge thank you to them for creating an awesome platform. It is a little bit unique since everyone is obviously very used to Zoom. So just wanted to run through some notes here. This event's going to be recorded. I'm going to be sending out the link to y'all in the next couple of days. When we're in the panel like we are right now, we cannot hear or see you. So don't worry about trying to figure out if you're on camera or anything. You're not. But when you are so afterwards, when you join, maybe you saw a few tables that you could sit at. That is for networking, and it opens up a private meeting room with about 4 to 8 people. So you will be on video and off mute at that time. And just make sure that you are, if you're making a comment and engaging the conversation, great. If you have kids at home, if you have significant others at home, if you have pets running around, please don't let that be a blocker. We completely understand that we're in a very unique time, and our work and personal lives have merged a little bit. Would still love for y'all to take this time and opportunity to meet some new people in the product world. We have some awesome women here tonight, and non-women that are in the audience. So thank y'all for joining. But please, use that time. We ask that you be respectful and have fun. And if you dig social media, we'd love for y'all to tag us and use our hashtag. So, without further ado, I'm going to hand this party over to Blair to get things started.
Awesome. Thanks, Brianna. Hi, everyone. I am absolutely thrilled to be here. My goal is to make this the most fun, informative, and also hopefully inspiring panel that you've attended all month. Okay, so that's the goal. And I just can't wait to kind of hear your questions and learn from the panel. What I'd love to do is to start off by asking the lovely ladies on the panel about their background. But I have a twist. Anami, Heather, Anusha, I didn't tell you this. You're going to kill me, right? I didn't tell you this. I have a bit of an icebreaker question, and the icebreaker question is this. What was your favorite cereal or breakfast food growing up? Okay, so to give you some time, I'll start with my background and I'll dive in straight to Anami. Okay, so again, I'm Blair. I have been a product manager for about a decade. I'm actually a product instructor with General Assembly and love it. In fact, just after this panel, I have a class to teach, right? I love teaching and coaching with GA. Full-time, I am a product management coach, which means that I help individuals leverage their previous or transferable skills and help them to get into product management through a program that I coach. So I do a lot of private one-on-one and group coaching all day, actually. So that is me in a nutshell. And in terms of my favorite breakfast cereal, it's probably going to be Reese's Puffs cereal. If anybody remembers that and loves chocolate as much as I do, or remembers when it launched, maybe your dad was like my dad and bought 17 boxes because it was on sale when it launched. That was my favorite. Anami, what was your favorite breakfast food, cereal, and a little bit about your background?
Sure. Thanks, Blair. This was an awesome icebreaker. So my name is Anami. I'm a product manager at Built-In. We are a community for tech professionals. helping tech professionals to find their dream job and company among tech companies throughout the US. I'm originally from Stockholm, Sweden, and I have a pretty nonlinear background. I started my career in ballet. So I've been really into training and health. And so I'm going to say that my favorite cereal is, boringly enough, oats. I start every morning with oats, and I've done so for most part of my life. So that's what I'm going for.
Way to make me feel super guilty about my dietary choices. Awesome. Anusha.
Hi, everyone. I am Anusha Ganeshan. I currently work at Oracle. I've held various product roles, including leadership roles, working both on the inbound and outbound product management side. My previous role was at a local company based in Austin called E2Open. Yeah, my career track has been mostly in tech, but I've held different roles. I've been a programmer at one time, moved on to building a consulting career for about 7 years, and then moved into product management. And going into my favorite breakfast cereal, I would say it's Post, the honey bunches of oats. I really love it. I can pick it for breakfast anytime. And for some reason, if I can't sleep in the night, that's my go-to food. So yeah, I love it.
Solid choice. Solid choice. Awesome. Heather, all you.
Yeah, that's a great question. So actually, I had it this morning. It's Lucky Charms. Did y'all know that they have unicorns now?
Didn't know that.
Yeah, so I started off my career in consulting. I was a Java developer, so I both talked to customers about problems, and then I actually coded the solutions. And then I switched into front end, and then project management, and then eventually switched into product at a few different startups. And more recently, in the last 2 years, became a co-founder for a consumer marketplace for event photography, which has been very interesting, especially in the last few months.
Sweet. Heather, I have 2 questions for you. With your Lucky Charms, do you wait to the end and hold all your marshmallows together, or do you just eat them just spoonful by spoonful? What's your strategy?
I'm someone who likes to build my bites.
Yep.
For any kind of food. So every single spoon has to have some of the cereal and some of the marshmallows. Otherwise, you're just left with the cereal. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's how I do it.
Sorry, most important question. Second one is just in terms of your transition into product, you were a developer, which is a really common way in, even though there's so many roads that lead to product. My question for you is, how did you know that product was for you? How did you decide upon product management as your career?
Yeah, so for me, to be honest, it kind of happened organically. I took a really roundabout way into product where I basically went into less technical, and then I went into more people-focused roles, and then people were both my clients and other folks that I worked with on cross-functional teams, so sales, marketing, other product people, engineers were coming to me and telling me that I had a knack for product. I had no idea what it was. And so I just started doing odds and end jobs for product managers at actually a company called Bazaar Voice that went public. And so after Bazaar Voice, I really searched for a way into product. And it took me actually going to a smaller company that had huge gaps in their product team, where I came in and cleaned house and then basically took over products, and then ended up moving into Retail Me Not, where it was really consumer focused, which is what I love. But curious to hear, Anusha, you also had some programming in your background.
Yep, that's right. So I started out as a developer, mostly working on the product engineering side. And I have 2 stories to tell about how I landed in product. One is a story that is actually built over my career, and the second one is more like life happens, right? So the first one being I started out as a product engineer, moved into a consulting role. Again, I love working with customers. I love working with people. So I kind of figured I'm not the code behind the desk kind of person. So I moved into consulting, did that for about 7 to 8 years, mostly around Oracle products, built out a successful career track there, and then moved into product management. And my second story is more around life happens. As a consultant, of course, I was very busy. I used to travel pretty much all over North America for at least 38 to 40 weeks, and I had a baby. And when my son was nearing a year, I was like, okay, this lifestyle is not going to fit anymore. And that's about the time when I got really serious about moving into a product role. And I started my switch by making the transition at my company at that time, Oracle.
Awesome. It's interesting. Your story resonates with me in a way as well. I transitioned into product from sales. I was laid off, and it's actually kind of really timely given the year that is 2020 and the world that we are all living in, right? But I was laid off on a Friday, which also happened to be the same day that I had my first product management interview. I was panicked. I didn't know how this all was going to work. This was back in 2011 when the economy was very interesting, right? And then what do you know, 30 days later, I was an associate product manager from sales. So that life happens piece, I think, is something that resonates with me. And I also, and I'm reading some of the questions that are in chat as well, this question about how do we all break in? We've all transitioned into product from very, very different paths, right? Developing, some from project management, some as business analyst. I was in sales, so for sure that resonates with me a lot. Anami, I have a question for you. In terms of some of the biggest lessons you think you've learned during your time as a PM, what comes to mind?
Yeah, I think I'd like to elaborate a little bit on my journey into product because it's a little different than the other speakers too. So I actually, like I said, I grew up in Stockholm, Sweden, and I started my career in ballet, right? Very, very far from product. And I was working professionally for about 6 years, touring with a big ballet company in London called the English National Ballet, and kind of was part of these really huge productions with a lot of different artistic competences being put into one experience, right? Being the dancer in a production, you're also working with like an orchestra, and you have makeup artists, and you have costume designers, and like all of these different skills kind of go into this one experience that you're creating for an audience. And so anyway, when I left ballet, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And I ended up going back to Sweden and doing a business degree. I ended up doing a master's degree in economics and learned a lot about data and statistics. And that kind of brought me into a research, more data analyst role that I worked with for a while. Doing research about economic growth and technology, and stumbled upon like, okay, all the economic growth right now is happening in tech. Why don't I try to get into that? So I got my first job at a startup in Stockholm as a project manager in growth. And I was actually working on business strategy and developing a new segment, new business unit for them. And I was spending a lot of time with the users, with the customers of this product that they were building. And I was starting to bring this feedback back to the tech team. And it was a pretty small startup at the time, Series A, and they didn't have a product team. So what happened is that the CTO started pulling me into their sprint plannings and started kind of coaching me into Agile and taught me everything. This is the most important person, I think, in my product career, because I learned everything there. I didn't even know what was product before that or what was Agile before that. And so that's kind of how I got into product. I've had some consultancy experience also since then, which I thought was great because you get exposed to so many different kinds of product, different clients, different users. And then I landed at Built-in about 1.5 years ago. And I think, there's so many learnings along the way, but one like pivotal point for me was that I really, at some point when I was pivoting my career, I felt like such a misfit in the labor market. I'm like, I know a little bit of data. I know a little bit of project management. I know some business strategy, and like, I have this arts background, and like, what can I do with all of these skills? Right. It doesn't really fit into like a traditional career. But then you realize that actually product is the perfect career for this, because you need so many of these different skills to like manage the product life cycle and the different cross-functional skills in the teams and strategy and so on. So I think that's like, to your first question, what's been my main learning since getting into product is really how nuanced it is and how different people's backgrounds can be coming into it. There really is not one straight path that you need to follow to get into product.
Could you imagine just how terrible products would be if we all just had the same path in? If we all were just in sales first, for example, and then came into product, or we all were just engineers first, right? I think it's that diversity of background and thought and perspective that really makes some of the best products that we experience every day. Anusha, what about you in terms of maybe one of the biggest lessons that you have learned since you've transitioned into product?
I think the biggest lesson I learned is the ability to influence without authority. Yeah. It's a very important skill in product management, especially being in other roles. You somehow can manage your customer, you can manage your people you're working with, your team, people you report to. But with product management, you interact with a diverse set of people, different backgrounds, stakeholders, their customers. So I think it's more around understanding how to influence people so that they can align with the product vision. And really, that's how you sell your vision to start with. And then after that, everything else it falls into place.
Plus 1,000 to that. And that was one of the very first and difficult lessons that I think I learned as a PM as well, just that communication piece. I tell my students and clients all the time that, I didn't realize until I became a product manager that I was actually an introvert. Like not massively, but just left of center. And it's a role, even coming from sales, that I spent just so much of my day speaking in and just influencing and having sidebar and just hallway conversations to influence a decision. One of the things I didn't anticipate before joining, before it was, popular to talk about influencing without authority like a decade ago. Heather Lee.
That's true.
What about you?
So for me, I think the biggest lesson was that to be a great product manager, you spend the majority of your people managing people. You spend the majority of your time managing people and a smaller portion of your time managing the actual projects or product. In the sense that, I guess for me, you spend time talking to users, you spend time with cross-functional teams, you spend time in front of the executive team, or getting buy-in throughout the company or with your engineers and designers. So you actually spend a lot more time making sure that everyone understands what's going on, listening to people. So it's all people-centric. And you, I think that coming from a project management background as like my role right immediately preceding me becoming a product manager, I had to make that switch. And it was a mental shift because I think a lot of the times new product managers think that it's all about managing a budget, a timeline, the sprint. But actually what the executive team's going to, applaud you for is not that you launched this really crappy feature on time, but that you actually pushed back and said, hey, this thing is crap. Users don't even care about it. We're building something that's going to take us 3 months that in the end we're going to trash. So instead, they'd rather see you do the homework, get the data, talk to the people, and find out what's more meaningful. And so that's why I think for me it was really interesting because I didn't expect that that's what it was. But then when I look back on the folks who I've worked with at companies where I had strong product teams, all of those product people were really good at schmoozing, but it wasn't just like a fake schmooze. It was, they actually helped you understand why something was being launched and why you needed to be supportive of the launch.
Absolutely. Absolutely. In terms of, it's one of the roles where there needs to be a safe place to say no tactfully, or a safe place to say why this won't work. And no one really wants a bunch of yes men or women in this role unless we're just looking for folks who can stand up and say, hey, I really believe in this feature or this product or this launch, and here's why. To that end, what about mentors? Who's had a mentor? Does anybody have a product mentor at any point in their career? Anusha has. Heather, Anami?
I'd say that I've had a series of mentors that I mean, people who I really think are good at a specific thing. And so I might seek advice for a specific thing. But I'm curious to hear, Anusha, about your relationship and how that transpired.
I think for me, my best mentor, especially on the product side, happened to be the person I directly worked for. So I was at Oracle for a long time and kind of needed a boost in my career, kind of a refresher. So I joined a small company, relatively smaller compared to the size of Oracle it is. So they were in a rapid growth phase at Austin, and that was intentionally something that I was looking for. And it was really the VP of product. And it was a person who held his vision for 14 years of the product, right? So I joined a time when they had hit the growth phase, but as I worked more closer with them, it's like they had actually gone through 14 years, different cycles, so many improvements to get to the stage where you could call it a very successful product, right? So it's kind of just learning things around persistence, just seeing how they work on a day-to-day basis, looking at how they talk to customers, the other engineers, and then more around how passionate they are about the actual work itself, the tactical part of it, including the strategy and everything. So I think my boss at one point had been the best product mentor that I had. So yeah, I'd like to hear other ideas or from you guys.
I'm curious about your experience as well.
Yeah. So I mentioned the CTO at the first tech company that I worked at, who helped coach me into Agile. But I've had one other mentor that's been really meaningful for me. And it's not a product mentor. It's actually a person that was on our board of directors as an advisor in the first tech company I worked at. And he's a well-known entrepreneur and investor in Sweden. And he started being my mentor when I started as a management trainee at that company. And he really gave me this perspective from the leadership side and from the investor side. What did they care about with this company? And then that was very meaningful for me because I could then align that information with the product work that I was developing. And so I actually had another pivotal moment there where I was offered another job at more of a corporate company at the time. And he gave me, I think, the most impactful advice of my career at that time, as I was deciding whether to stay as a management trainee at the startup that was totally unknown, or to go to more of an analyst role at a corporate company, which seemed like a really, safe way. It was a global brand. If I wanted to move to the US, there would be some kind of transition path. But he told me, optimize early in your career, optimize for your growth, optimize for challenging yourself, optimize for being close to leadership. Don't optimize for status or for compensation or for stability when you're just early on in your career. And so I decided to stay within the startup and decline the corporate job and took a huge risk at that time, I thought. But then it turns out, moving to the US, coming from a startup background, it was probably a lot easier to get a job here than it would have been maybe from the other side. So it's been meaningful. And to have a mentor doesn't mean that you need to have a product mentor. You can have mentors from other disciplines too that can help you in meaningful ways in your career.
Sweet. So true. So true. Anyone else? Heather Lee? There?
Yeah, I guess the one thing I wanted to add to that is, I agree with Inami. For me personally, the people who really helped me succeed in my product roles were actually not in product. I found a lot of, somebody early in my career told me to stop spending so much time seeking specifically like a dedicated mentor, just because it's a lot of pressure on one person. But instead, actually told me that it was more important to focus on advocates. And in the product role, it's a highly political role, depending on the size of your company. Although I guess even if you're a small company, you have battles to fight. But in a larger company, you're often going up against other product managers for resources. Like in my last role, I had 20 engineers, and there were other product folks who had to share engineers. And that was something that was over time. And it's only out of developing advocates within the company and outside the company. And obviously, finding a board member, I wish I could have done that. I didn't have the access to those folks years. However, what I did, which was actually small things that some of my male colleagues shared with me over drinks or over coffee, was to whisper. So one of the things that's really important in product is that people buy into your product. So whether that be the C-levels, or whether it be somebody in sales who's like the moneymaker on the sales team, they need to believe that what you're building is really worthwhile so they can sell it to the clients before you even build it. And so for me, a lot of it was around just making sure that I spread like my secrets of like what I was planning to build, what I was thinking about building, amongst not just my engineering team and designers, but also like got people across functions really excited. So marketing, instead of them marketing saying, oh my gosh, there's a month till this launch, now I have to go build a bunch of marketing assets for her. Like they are actually pumped up about this idea that I had before I even decided to do it. Just because I started talking about like, oh, I'm thinking about this thing, still gathering data. So don't tell anyone I told you that. And so over time, you kind of build this, this excitement. And then also people at the executive level, when they're like, hey, what if we did something like X, Y, or Z? Then somebody would be like, oh, Heather was talking about that 2 months ago. And so your name will get mentioned in circles when you're not in the room. And so for me, that was a huge deal. I got invited to meetings where I was the only non-executive at the table, only because I kept saying like weird things that were actually in my mind, but I shared it before it was like, I didn't have to go. It wasn't this full vetted 30-minute presentation in front of everyone. It was just literally like a 2-second conversation in the hallway when my CEO was like getting coffee at the same time as me. But I would also time my bathroom breaks to be at the same time as the CMO so that we could just like, because I knew some things that I was going to launch were going to like make her mad because it was going to cost her team a lot of time. So I would try to like do things like that, which it sounds crazy, but it worked and it was fun. So yeah.
What dedication? Okay, what dedication, Heather? I love it. But I think you're right. I think two things. First off, planting those seeds to get buy-in early, absolutely critical. There's nothing worse than announcing a project after you've done all of the work and have your team say, what are you doing? Why are we doing? What's the deal here? So I'm a big fan of pulling in teams, whether it's engineering or CFO or whomever, early on and start planting that seed, just as you said. And the second thing that I guess I could add to that is that it's kind of really comforting to be here and to hear you and realize that my whole career was like so similar, right? Like I'm that woman on an island. I'm like, yes, +1 to all of those things because that totally represents my experience as well. I have a question, per usual. I guess that's my job, right? To come with another question. This is it. In terms of joining a new company, right? There are a lot of people who are looking to make the switch or maybe recently made the transition into a PM role for the first time, and they've read all the books and all the guides, etc. But I'd love for you all to share your experience in terms of what that was like for you, and maybe 1 or 2 things that you would love to share as advice to an aspiring or a new PM who's in the role. So again, If you are just joining a company as an APM, what advice would you give someone? Anusha, if we could start with you.
Sure, yeah. So I would like to compare this to driving a car. So if you haven't driven in the US and other places where they still drive stick shifts, you're in first gear, second gear, and third gear. So your first 3 months are really driving in first gear. The 3 to 6 months are second gear, and then 6 to 9 months are third gear. So you start off slow. I think that's something you need to remind yourself. It's better to just go in, take your time, understand everything that's around you, understand the product, the customers, your team, more importantly, building relationships with your team, getting to know everybody you're going to work with, and then just understanding the process the company has been following, unless you're called in to set it up from scratch, just understanding what the company has been doing and understanding the company culture. I think that's very important too in the first 3 months, and then focus on small wins. It's okay not to start big. Focus on small wins. And then once you've had people looking at you telling that, okay, yeah, she does bring a lot of value to the company and the product, and then you kind of move into your second year, which is the 3 to 6 months, where you're focusing more on roadmap. Roadmap at that point would really look like the current release and maybe just 1 or 2 releases down the line. Just focus on releases, customers, and then getting to know customers is important. At least your top 5 customers should know you by name. That's very important. Networking with customers. And then once you've gotten past the 3 to 6 month phase, you're kind of in the 6 to 9 months in third gear where you're ramping up even faster. That's when you have a clearer vision for what your product should be. You've got a good understanding of your customers, your product, the market, and how you want to use all that to build a strategy. So that's when the vision starts becoming more clear, and then you can start working on the long-term vision, which is 3 to 5 years, and then the near term, which could be 1 to 3 years, and then breaking it up into your releases. So it is a slow ramp up. It takes a lot of diligence, patience, and effort, but definitely it pays off at the end.
I love it. Get to know your users and pace yourself. Try not to do all the things right away. Solid advice. Anami, what do you say?
Yeah, I think I have 5 things that I usually try to do to get kind of a kickstart to at least feel like, okay, I got this, I can hit the ground running. The first thing is to really identify and understand who is the user. So for example, in one previous job, I was working on a product for hair salons. So I went to hairdresser events and talked to people and in my first week at work, just because I needed to feel who those people were and understand they were a little bit. Likewise, when I started at Built-in, we used to host these Built-in brew events at our customers' offices. And in my first week at Built-in, I went to a Built-in Brews. I networked with some people and try to understand why they use our product and who they are, and just to feel who those people are really that are going to use what I'm going to build. Second thing is stakeholders. So who are your stakeholders? Obviously, you're going to have some kind of manager, but then there are some stakeholders that are really important to build relationships with upfront, so that you can go to them, get buy-in, get information that you need. Third is really trying to understand the company goals and vision. So can you get a lunch with your CEO? Can you talk to someone in the management team to really understand where did this company come from and where is it going? What is the vision, so that you feel that and you can align with it. And then fourth, what are your outcomes? Within your specific role, maybe you have a lot of PMs and you're responsible for one particular outcome, or maybe you're the only PM responsible for a lot of outcomes. But in any case, what outcomes are you trying to drive and what are your KPIs? It's very important to know. And then the fifth is, I would say, you really get to know your team. Your team is going to be the people you spend the most time with. You're going to have to be a really tight team, understand their strengths, their weaknesses, to really collaborate well together and do your everyday work well. Then you can hit the ground running and go on to the 3-year growth that I agree with that Anusha was describing.
For sure. Heather, do you have any additions?
I think the first one that Anna me mentioned about identifying the user is critical. I mean, you're building something for a set of people, so you've got to make sure that you understand where they come from. I think empathy is one of the number one skills for product managers. So I'd say that, definitely second that. Building and nurturing cross-functional relationships, that's something that I felt had really helped me in my career, not just in product, but in my career in general. But it would help you make the case for any piece of what you're building. So in product, you're talking about getting buy-in just to even get the resources to build that in this next quarter. And then you're also constantly trying to prevent your engineers from getting stolen to other teams by some competing resource, or the executive team's product of the day. So you're always kind of trying to protect your team. So it's huge to have that cross-functional buy-in. And then additionally, Anami mentioned building relationships within your team. So for me, that's really critical, that you trust and build trust with your lead engineer and your engineering manager. So I often take them into meetings where I'm ideating on something that we might build, getting their input on how, initial scope, how long would this take? Is this a 3-month project? Is this a 1-month project? What can we give and take? Can we build a pilot that we could run for a week and see what the data says? And how do we break this down? And so involving them earlier on, I'd say that's a huge thing, because the thing coming into any company, and especially as a product person who holds the keys, it's really important that people trust you and that they don't think you're just some random person coming in ordering people around. Because I think, to Anusha's point earlier, influencing without authority, right? I can't fire anyone. I can't even, I could talk to an engineering manager about someone's performance, but quite honestly, I have worked at many companies where there were engineers who some other person claimed was underperforming. And as soon as I worked with them, it's actually not the case. It just happens that some people don't know how to communicate. And so it's really important that when you come in, you spend a lot more time listening and asking questions, which this is something that does not come natural to me. So I had to spend that extra effort in doing the active listening, be that crazy person with the notebook asking 100 questions, just to understand the team, understand what am I coming into, what are the politics around it. You might find out that there's some people who are in key roles who really butt heads. And so to avoid being the person who gets smashed in the middle, you have to actually understand what they're fighting about, what it is they don't like, and then find a way that if you can find a way to actually make them agree on something, you're going to have a win. And so for me, I always looked for, coming into any new company, it's just like the new kid in school. You want to make a great impression, and the best way to make a great impression is do something unexpected. People are always concerned that you're going to come in and take over their territory, but if you actually come in and build something new, so fixing broken relationships, that's one of those opportunities, but also just coming up with seeing where there are gaps in the products and addressing those first is really a small, nobody's going to be upset that you're fixing stuff. So I try to play friendly at first while I'm still kind of understanding where the ground is. And then after that, I start getting a little bit more aggressive.
Awesome. Final question for Anami and Anusha. One book or resource or podcast that you think that every product manager should read, absorb, or get to know. What say you?
Anami, you want to go first?
Sure. I love Inspired by Marty Kagan. I love his way of thinking of product and writing about product. Oh, everyone else feels that too. Yes, that's my favorite.
Agreed.
Okay, I've been spending my time more on listening to product-related podcasts. A couple of them that I really like. One is This Is Product. So that's mainly product leaders and product managers from various backgrounds talking about their experience and different companies and how product management works. And I think it's very useful, especially when you're starting out. That used to be my routine when I was driving to work every day. I had like 45 minutes in the car where I used to listen to it. And trust me, in 6 months, my knowledge about product management had increased quite a bit. And then the second one is interesting. It's called Humans Strike Back. It's not related to product management, but it's something that you really can listen to, just understand how to work with people. Right? So there are different backgrounds. It's like, just teaches you compassion, empathy, just more around how it says humans strike back. I mean, they do. I think a lot of times it's you create the culture around you and you kind of learn the tactics just to understand people and deal with them on a day-to-day basis while you're still kind of keeping your sanity and calm.
Keeping your sanity, absolutely critical. Thank you, ladies, for sharing your wisdom. We have a ton of questions in the live chat. I will help you out a little bit and start answering some of them as we go, but per, I guess, norm, right? We'll start with like some rapid fire ones. So the first one is related to, it's kind of like a background question. This person is a developer, has an undergraduate degree in computer science, transitioned to ops, interning in project, and is wondering if they have a chance in product. And I would absolutely say, why not? Right? Depending on how you're able to communicate your transferable skills and show some relevancy between what the job is asking and what your background has been, how you've delivered or how you've had exposure to the things that the job is asking for, there's space for you for sure. So, I mean, even looking at the four of us, each of us have completely different backgrounds, right? There's no solid stamped path into product. Most specifically, I'll tell you a quick story. I taught a student about a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago at this point, who was a dental hygienist before taking the product management class at General Assembly. She is now an associate product manager. It's feasible. She's transitioned from being a dental hygienist to a junior product analyst, now an APM. So just be inspired that there's not one path and that certainly your background would be a solid fit. So for Anusha, what do you think about this? There's a question about certificates. Do you think that a PMP, for example, or an Agile certificate is necessary? What's your take?
I think more than PMP, project management professional is good. It really helps when you're managing a project, but a lot of it is transferable to product management as well. But getting that certification is not very easy. It's time consuming and you need to kind of keep it up, renew it every 3 years. So I would say what's more important is really helpful. One is CSPO, that's Certified Scrum Product Owner. So that really kind of helps you in your role of product owner, just understanding the Scrum process and how do you fit in there as a product manager. And there's a second one which is very good. It's called Pragmatic Marketing. So they have about 6 sessions and they break it down into different areas, focusing on inbound product management and outbound. So inbound is really working with your internal teams, which is engineering and support. And outbound product management is where you're working with your customer-facing teams like sales and marketing. So it talks about, after you sit through the session, you really understand how a product goes through all these different channels within the company. So I think pragmatic marketing and CSPO have been very relevant to the job, and especially when you're earlier in your product management career.
Perfect. In terms of the difference between a technical PM or a PM, like how do you believe that they differ? Anami, if that's something that you'd love to take, what do you think?
Sure. I think there are a lot of different types of product management, and specifically on the technical side, so at Built-in, for example, we have one pod that focuses specifically on data and infrastructure, and our PM for that pod has a more rigorous background in data science himself. So that is a pretty common technical PM or data PM role that you might see out there. So if you have like a really strong background within data or data science, that can be a really good path for you. Even like if you have data engineering or some AI machine learning experience, there are so many interesting PM roles within that space. Then I think there are some, like we have, for example, another pod that is more focused on site reliability, infrastructure. That is like another niche that a more technical background can really be a better fit for.
Sweet.
And then, I mean, I don't have a technical background. A lot of PMs I work with don't have a technical background too.
Mm-hmm. For sure. It's not a requirement. There's a question about, and I think this came up from Heather's comment related to competing resources. If you are a PM and having to kind of compete for internal resources, what that looks like. And the question was, do all PMs send a proposal to their engineering team? Then it's the engineering team or the technical team's decision as to whose proposal to develop. And it actually doesn't exactly work that way in most companies. It's really something that's done collaboratively. So I may discover as a PM an opportunity or work with some other, maybe the sales team or marketing team or user to discover an opportunity. I am much more likely to bring it to the engineering team to say like, hey, this is something that came up. What are your thoughts in terms of feasibility? But it's not the engineering team's decision necessarily to work on it or not to work on it. That's something that may be driven from the VP of product or CPO, but really done collaboratively. It's not my engineer's decision to tell me what we or will not be working on. But next question is in terms of product design. I love these questions. So what action items, and Heather, if I can toss this one to you, what action items can product designers do to make life easier for product managers? So we don't often get that question, like who can make life easy?
Yeah, wow, that's an awesome question.
Love it. Yeah, thank you.
So that's hard. Okay, so depending on the company, I guess when you're saying product designer, the assumption here is that this designer is dedicated to the product team and not necessarily working on marketing stuff as well. I'm just going to say that's my assumption.
Sure, then we'll take it.
Okay. I'd say that this is tough. So I've worked in situations where design is strapped. Like we had way too many product managers and not enough designers. And so I guess it's really dependent on the company situation. But I would say that can you come back to me? I have to gather my thoughts.
Can I add to that, if you don't mind?
Yeah.
I'd love to say if PMs and product designers really should be a part of that group that I think Anami was referring to, being super close and being communicative. So finding ways to share, like, hey, what is it that you need from me? What can I do to make your life easier? And then asking that same question. I think it's Dara that asked this question. What can I do? What do you need from me? And starting that open relationship so you start to understand what the constraints are. Because every PM may have different preferences or different needs. So making a broad brush assumption as to how that might look may not be the best thing. I would just say as it pertains to product design and product managers, and honestly, this probably applies across the board in terms of just having an open dialogue to say, what is it that you need? What is on your plate right now? What are some things that I should be sensitive to with a particular project or just in general? That's something that generally goes a long way.
Yeah, I'd like to add to that, especially if you're a product manager who's not very skilled on UI. I put myself there because I'm a UI person. I kind of like cool stuff, but nowhere a UX expert. And a lot of trends in the industry right now are, especially if you're a product designer, you're heavily focused on user experience, and you've probably done a lot of research around it and then just understanding user behavior and everything. So just trusting each other that both play different roles towards the common goal, I think that really helps.
For sure.
I have one thing to add to that. I think for me, when I work with a product designer, it's really helpful if they, for example, I don't have a dedicated UX researcher, so the product designer does both UX and design. And so it's very helpful when they have like templates and processes that make user research and qualitative research very quick. So if you need to get feedback on one particular feature, like have some scalable and rapid testing processes that they can take the lead on to facilitate your, so that you can spend your time on other things. And then the other thing is being super organized. So the day-to-day work is, in reality, you end up spending a lot of time writing acceptance criteria and user stories and creating stories in Jira or whatever you use. And so having all the design links like super organized and knowing where to reference what, and having like being proactive and testing and QAing and looking at if everything is looking good and giving you feedback, like being very organized is super helpful for me in a product designer.
Cool.
Okay, I actually have something to add now. So I think that I've worked with so many amazing designers. I've been really lucky. And the thing that I think is always the biggest challenge in the companies I've worked at has been that a lot of the times design is kind of, I don't want to say it's a black box, but the rest of the company knows nothing about what design's doing until somebody puts it in an all hands meeting and like throws it onto a slide. And it's the product manager's job to share those designs, because until the product launches, that designer is literally spending weeks, months, hours iterating on these designs, and nobody gets to see them until it actually launches. And there are many times where product designers will design things that doesn't ever launch. Like, we might talk about it a lot, executive team talks about it a lot, we like pass it around, discuss it during roadmap meetings, and then it just never happens. And so I think that the thing that could really help is with designers to just have more open communication, because I think that there's this time where sometimes somebody asks you to do something and then you go off into your zone and you design something, but it doesn't match. And part of it has to do with like the miscommunication. And a product manager, especially in the circumstance where there's so many product people and there's only like 5 designers and you have like 25 product people, like the product manager doesn't want to be all up in your face all the time asking you or telling you all these things. So they're waiting for you to like ask a question to clarify like what you're designing. And it goes both ways, right? Like, obviously I try to check in on my designers by just sending them daily or weekly like Slack messages. But generally speaking, I think from a designer standpoint, if the designer could just communicate more when there are questions as they're working on stuff, it would help. It would help reduce some of the like excess work that doesn't end up getting used. But the other thing is that, unfortunately for designers, product managers often get inspiration from designs. Even if the design isn't what launches, I can come up with other tangential products that I could build based on a design that is brought to me. So I don't know if that helps.
I think that's awesome. And actually, that rounds out our Q&A part. We are at time. However, if you are able to hang on, that will be awesome. We have a little bit of networking that's taking place. I'll actually drop my LinkedIn, so I know that we didn't get a chance to answer all of the questions in the session, but I'm happy to connect with any of you, and actually would encourage that any of you to connect with me post. I would love to answer any remaining questions. Anami, Heather, Anusha, you are gems. Thank you for sharing them. Thank you for sharing your gems. And Brianna, thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thanks, Blair.
Thank you. Hey, Brianna, I think you're on mute. Not yet. Nope. Can't hear you yet, but I'm sure it's like pure wisdom that's coming. And I have a feeling you're about to take us to networking. Yes?